Hello, welcome. My name is Dr. Joe, and I want to welcome you to our uncovering, I should say, your book blocking episodes or what prevents you from writing. So we want to uncover those things that block you from writing your book. I'm not a coach, but I am an author that the speaker today is responsible for me having my book published. And that person is Dr. Peggy Woods. She has a doctorate in ministry and a master's in theology, and she's the founder of Right Now Publishing Company. And while she is very busy as an entrepreneur and many different things, she loves to help people write and publish their books. And that's why we're here. She has a great deal of credibility, and I can speak from personal experience how she helped me through multiple coaching sessions to get the book published. And we're going to talk about that later. But she's been writing herself since 2002, excuse me, and started the Right Now Publishing Company in 2007. And since then, she has published 5 books and going for more than 5. And she has another 10 or so in the tips of her tongue, so to speak, on how to write books and write on different subjects. She likes to work with women, particularly, and she has done some work with women from Christian Hebrew perspective. And so that's quite fascinating when you think about it. In 2023, she was writing coach and contributed to the Healthpedia resource guide. And in 2024, this year, she coached writers in a trajectory in a book anthology and became the best-selling author on both endeavors. And so without much further ado, I would like to introduce to you, but some people may already be working with Coach Peggy Woods. But for the rest of us, it is our honor to be working with such a fantastic human being who loves to help people. Dr. Peggy Woods, the show is yours.
Thank you so much, Dr. Joe. I appreciate you. Did you know that 97% of people start writing a book but never finish it? Well, don't worry, because I'm going to help you uncover those blocks that are stopping you from writing and publishing your book. I was appointed by the Lord to only write nonfiction books for people because your story matters. What you have to say could save somebody's life. It could save somebody's business. It could save someone's soul. So today I help busy entrepreneurs and individuals write best-selling books so that they can gain credibility, leverage their influence, and leave a lasting legacy. But the problem is, most people won't write it. And if you don't tell your story, it will ultimately go to the grave with you. But I'm fighting for you. I'm fighting for your voice not to be silenced like mine was many years ago. So today, we're going to start with uncovering those blocks that prevent you from moving forward. So you too can become an impactful published author. So I'm going to start with a PowerPoint, and I'm going to share my screen. There we go. Okay, can everybody see my screen okay?
Yes, I can see your screen with your different folders.
Okay.
And
Oh, my different folders, you see?
Now we can see the slides with you, or with, yes, you and another young lady.
Yes, okay, thank you. This is the first book that I wrote in 2014. And Candace, the lady standing with me, has a really nice boutique in Culver City. And she invited me to have my book signing there. And it was a mutual um, gathering. It was very nice because she invited her people and I invited my people. And we had a book signing. I talked about my book and we bought clothes. So what better
Dr.
compliment?
Peggy, don't want to interrupt. Do you want this in presentation mode? It looks like it's just in slides, not the full screen.
Oh, okay. Let me restart it then because I might have the wrong one. Uh, let me start. I'm going to start over. Thank you so much, Dr. Phil.
While she's getting that queued up, you notice next to her name, she has a phone number. And write that number down and get in contact with her if you want to find a little bit more about why your story is so important to the world, as she has indicated. So make sure you make a copy of her number and give her a call.
Okay. Now, is it in presentation mode now?
Now it's a PowerPoint mode, and so it's good.
Okay, great. So as I was saying, Candace, we had a book signing. I had the book signing at her boutique in Culver City, and it was a mutually beneficial for both of us because people bought books and we bought clothes. So, ladies, if you know what I mean, that's makes a win-win situation. And that was my first book that I wrote. Now, I want to tell you that it's important that you write a book for credibility, especially if you're a business owner, because it just kind of gives you an edge, right? If you wrote a book, someone will be more likely to invite you on podcasts, radio, uh, shows, and also to say, okay, well, there must be an expert. So when it comes to credibility, I recently was in a project that Dr. Joe talked about called Trajectory. And within that project, I participated and wrote a chapter. And I also was the book writing coach uh, for that venture. And the benefits are, again, credibility for writing your book. Also, testimonials. When you write your book, you're going to give an excerpt to some people that you know, and you're going to ask them for a testimonial. These particular testimonials was for my coaching in that project. However, I also have testimonials for my participation with the chapter I wrote. And so credibility and influence comes from the testimonials you receive. Now, I just want to point out for a learning point. This first testimonials, he says he was overwhelmed with the process, but I helped him remain focused on the vision and I supported him when he needed it. So when you receive testimonials, you want to ask the client what benefits did they get from the process of the writing, because just to say, oh, we did, she did a good job, it's not really giving you a lot of credibility. So it's better when you can ask the client the questions that you want to ask them that will point you directly to the answers that you want so that your testimonials could be of more value. So those are just some of them. Now, there's additional intangible benefits to writing a book. Did you know that it's therapeutic? That research has shown that when you're writing a book, your blood pressure goes down, your blood pressure is high, you will want that because it's relaxing. It's also emotionally therapeutic. Writing a book boosts your confidence. Once you write this book, you will be different. And I'm sure Dr. Joe can attest to that. You will never be the same. You'll be more confident in what you wrote. You'll make an impact. And I could tell you stories about how people have told me, they wish that I had written a book when I forgot what's his name. He passed away. He committed suicide. But I have had people who I've talked to and coached through their processes that have had some traumatic experiences. And those experiences open them up after they've written their book to speak about, to literally speak about those experiences, to make an impact on other people. And so it's not just about you gaining credibility and influence, but it's about impacting others and leaving a legacy. Your book becomes a legacy for your children and children's children. Um, I remember Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill. Napoleon Hill, I'm gonna go back to this. Napoleon Hill wrote Think and Grow Rich in 1932, and it's still on the bestseller list today because his legacy is carrying the book on there. We read it in our mastermind. There's the Think and Grow Rich organization. And so I know a lady whose father was, who gave retreats, and he wrote a book. She's still selling it today because I bought a copy, and she gives retreats. So she uses it for her retreats. Again, it is true. You can leave a legacy, make an impact, boost your confidence, and have therapeutic benefits from writing your book. There's some tangible benefits to writing a book as well. You can use it for a lead magnet. So if I speak at an event and I give away an ebook in exchange for a phone number or email, then now I'm building my contact list from using my ebook. Or you can use a short synopsis of your book, a chapter of your book, just a small portion of your book for giveaway. It opens the door for speaking opportunities. I've spoken on many podcasts, radio stations, and in public because I had a book. And people do ask you that nowadays on podcasts. Do you have a book? You can sell your book whenever you want and wherever you go. I wrote my first book in 2014, and it's in my car. This book goes with me everywhere. And so if I want to sell it, I could sell it to someone who's interested, or I could give it away. But it's a valuable tool. Also, you can create a mastermind with your book. I do what they call a connect group or rooms where I have my book, my workbook, and my affirmation book. And I create dialogue. We read the book and we go through the workbook. And you can do that as part of your mastermind. You will see your visibility skyrocket when you write your book. So there's book writing blocks that we will talk about how to overcome them quickly so that you can write your book. Now, maybe you're thinking, oh, it's just an overwhelming process. And you may feel like this, oh my goodness, just forget it. I put my paper over my head, or you feel like you're scattered here, there, and everywhere. But I'm here to help you with that process. Maybe you have fear. There's hidden fears and doubts. You have imposter syndrome. I don't have time, you say. I'm a procrastinator. Don't know where to start or how to start. And we're going to talk about those things, and we're going to quickly move through how to overcome them. Oh, by the way, I don't believe in writer's block. Let me tell you why. I've never had it. The reason why is because writing is spiritual, writing is creative, and it has to come to you. You can feel it inside, but the words have to come. And so if you sit down to write, most of the time, if you get writer's block, because you're tense, you're uptight, you gotta write it. But the best thing to do is to go take a walk, go to the beach, go even just continue to work around the house, and it will come. And while you're waiting or just doing your thing, make sure you have a recorder or a pen and paper, because I guarantee you it will come. The ideas will come. And then sometimes you have to do something creative. Some people are visual. They may grab a board and start putting stickies on it of different things. Sometimes I'll grab a notebook and doodle just to get those creative juices going. So don't worry about writer's block. People talk a lot about it. Just say, okay, I'll wait for it to come. So imagine you're in the library, and with all of the books in the library, you walk up to someone and they're reading your book. Can you imagine how that would feel? Imagine you're being introduced at a speaker symposium that you were invited to talk about your book. Now, don't imagine the fear of speaking, but just imagine all the anticipation of the people waiting to hear what you have to say about your book. If you can only imagine. So let's get into some of the problems that we have that are stopping us from seeing our dreams come true. Now, what's the problem? Maybe what I would like you to do right now for this is I want you to take a picture. Get your phone out, take a picture of this, because I'm going to stop the share for a minute, and then we're going to talk about each one of these points, and then we will come back to the slide presentation. So I'm going to stop my share. And Dr. Joe, if you mute yourself, then I think I can
Okay.
see the person on the screen. You see me and I see you, I guess.
Yes.
You see me?
Yes, the two of us.
Oh, okay. I see. Okay. Sounds good. So now, so what's the problem? There's several problems. And if you took a picture, the first one was you were unclear. Your message, you're unclear because maybe your message hasn't been defined. Maybe you really don't know what you want to talk about. Maybe you don't know who you want to talk to. What do you want to talk? And maybe you think you know, but your message is not in alignment with what you want to write about. For example, I had a young lady I was coaching who was writing a book about her marriage, right? It was abusive as well. And she started talking about growing up and the country she grew up in, and all of this, her father, stepfather, her mother, and nothing was about the relationship. So she wanted to write about the situation so that she can help other women and other men, because men are in abusive relationships too. But she didn't write about that. She really wanted to write about her childhood. So her book was not going to be able to be published as a book that's writing about abuse, because her message was not in alignment. And once that happens, it's very difficult for people to change their message. Because they're like, well, I like what I wrote. Well, okay, take it. And this is what I do with that happens to me. I take that information and I file it in my computer. And when I get an opportunity to write it in another book or blog or magazine, then I write it there. Or a chapter, when you write a chapter, because a chapter is a really great way to start. Then I said, okay, I'm gonna write about my childhood now. So now then you have the opportunity. So don't think of it as a waste or a waste of time. Just file it away. Make sure that you have clarity on your audience. Who do you want to talk to? What do you want to tell them? Why is it so important that they know this? And keep that written down so where you can see it, because it'll keep you on track as you write. And it'll also, the why is so important will also motivate you when you get tired or feel like I don't have time or start having these other problems, emotions arise. The other one is fear and imposter syndrome, which are kind of synonymous. So fear, we know that is being afraid of something that may happen that is not even happening. It hasn't happened. It probably will not happen. But people say false evidence appearing real is how people define fear. And sometimes people have fear of not being qualified. If you are an entrepreneur and you do taxes and you want to write a book on 10 ways to keep from owing money or something like that, and you have a fear that you're not qualified to write that, well, why wouldn't you be? You've been doing taxes. It's your gift. It's what you do. You've done it for 10 years, 20 years, 5 years, 4 years, but you know how to do taxes. So why wouldn't you be qualified? Because it's false fear. And so you don't want to worry about what people will say. You don't want to worry about things that haven't happened. I'll tell you, if you are on a mission to write your book, you have to write it. You have to get your story out because somebody needs to hear it. You can trust me on that one. And sometimes you say, well, you know what? I don't have time. I'm busy. I'm working. I have kids. I gotta take care of this and that. But if you set priorities on what you do, then you will have time. So if you schedule out a time to write your book, then you can be diligent about writing during that time. If you even keep a schedule, like appointment book, like I'm old school, I have calendarly, yes, but I'm old school. I got this, and I have appointments on here, and I set time to write. When I wrote my first book, my niece and I, we met at the coffee shop, and we wrote for an hour, and we could not talk to each other for an hour. We couldn't do anything. All we could do was write. Well, after we got through, after the hour of writing, we didn't have nothing to say to each other anyway. So we drank our coffee and went home, or tea and went home. But it's really important that you make time. You can have time. And it doesn't really take that long. People think it takes a long time to write. It really doesn't. It's not about the semantics of writing. It's not about the grammar, the punctuations. Did I say this right? It's about what you have to say. What you have to say is more important than any of that stuff we learned in English. And I'm here to tell you that my punctuation, I send my stuff to a editor. Okay, when I finish writing, I send it to an editor to check to edit punctuation and grammar and everything, because that is not the essence of writing. The essence of the writing is what you have to say that you need to get out. What story? And we'll talk. That's I get into. It's a lot I can talk about. Stories is one of them. It's so important that you tell stories because they leave an indelible print in the mind of the reader, and they won't forget the story. They may forget what you're talking about, but they won't forget your story. So, in an advanced seminar or webinar, I can talk a little bit more about how to write impactful stories. So again, lack of priority, procrastination. People procrastinate because of all of those reasons that you took a picture of. Unclear, fear, no accountability, don't feel like doing it, unresolved issues, and perfectionism. All that is a result from procrastination. That's what procrastination is. Sometimes we have it on our sleeves, like, oh, I'm a procrastinator. I'm a procrastinator. Well, there's a reason, and I challenge you to delve into why you procrastinate and unresolved issues. And now this is kind of a big one because a lot of times people want to write about a situation they've gone through, but they have not healed from that situation. And it is impossible to write good work without healing first. You have to be authentic, right? So you have to tell your story. You can't say, you should do this, you should do that. You got to tell what you went through. But if you haven't healed, maybe your perception of really what happened wasn't correct, and you still have anger and you're bitter. And if that is the case, it will come across in your writing. It will come across that you're angry and bitter. You have to, it's almost like going to court. You have to prove that the person is guilty before you call them guilty. So in your writing, you will have to give cases of situations that prove that that person did you harm or guilt. It has to be direct, not indirect, would it seem like, would it look like, you thought it was. It has to be direct because otherwise it's not going to give you credibility. Also, you could be sued if you say something about someone that is untrue. So that's another story for another class. But you have to heal before, or go through and journal and everything and heal writing, but don't put out a book before you heal. Perfectionism is also a really big one. And unfortunately, some of the smartest people with so much to say and so much to give never published their book. I met a guy, he wrote his book with someone, got it published, and never distributed it because he felt it wasn't perfect. Well, never going to be perfect. So to overcome perfectionism, just you're going to write your story and you're not going to edit. You're going to write it, but I'm going to show you how to write it so that it's orderly. So you're going to write it. You're not going to worry about if it's perfect or not. You're not going to keep changing the subject. You're not going to keep rewriting and crossing out and starting over. No, you're not going to do that. You're going to write your story and let your editor or your writing coach help you through the process so that you can get it published. And sometimes perfectionism is a deep anxiety. I read that it could be due to deep anxiety. So you want to get your book out. You want to get it written and published. So far, do we have any questions?
I have one. This you keep mentioning perspective and stuff and story, and I took a class in Colorado for people, an extension program for people over 55, and that idea of a story, the facilitator was saying everybody has a story, and we're the main characters of our story, and everybody else is a secondary character. And so I would like to find out is do when you help people write their book, do you also help them discover a little bit more about themselves in the process?
Yes, I think that's automatic. So I usually ask people, tell me what happened, right? So then they start to tell me a story, and when they tell the story, I take notes, of course. And then when they say something like, well, when I was 6 years old, that happened, then I stop. Okay, now what happened when you were 6 years old? Where were you? What did it feel like? Where were you sitting? What happened? So I ask all of these questions. So questions open up the story, So I help you to to tell the story, and then once you realize that these answers to the question are leading somewhere, then you sometimes have a epiphany, like, that's what happened. That's what I felt. And that happens a lot. I have my little life coaching certification over there because I feel because I'm a pretty much I could say I'm like a life coach. I have people tell me stories that a lot of personal things. They say I had one guy say, my wife don't even know these stories. Well, I have a few people say that. Uh, so yes, you have there is definitely discovery that happens in the stories, and you're just gonna write, but you're not going to. I talk about like a sketch, right? So here you are, you're sketching a portrait or paint portrait, but after you sketch the portrait, then you begin to fill in the colors and fill in the details. Let me check my. You fill in the details of the sketch. So you don't worry about what I call painting the picture, because I do teach you how to paint the picture, but you're gonna write the book first. And then you're gonna come back and or the chapter, you're gonna come back and you're gonna say, okay, how can I embellish this? What kind of verbs or what kind of adverbs could I use to explain the way they walk or the adjectives? And I talk about that as well. But that's nothing to really start off with. You add that later, in your story. And so, okay, thank you. Did I answer your question, Dr. Bill?
Yes, you did.
Okay. All right. So I think I'm going to start the PowerPoint again, and we'll get into the next segment. It should be this one like that. Now you see the full screen with okay, there you go. So that's keep this chart, just to help you to remember to make time and to not procrastinate. This is what I was talking about. Here's some entrepreneurs and thought leaders whose lives were transformed from writing a book. Napoleon Hill, his family's life, his legacy is transformed from him writing the book. Think and Grow Rich. still today, and some other books he's written. Toni Morrison, the bluest eye. She received the Nobel Prize in literature for writing her book. J.K. Rowling. Now, this was the lady who was on food stamps, and she was poor. She wrote the Harry Potter series, but not only was it a book, it's a series and a whole culture now. Malcolm Gladwell, The Tipping Point, where he talks about meeting people who could change the trajectory of your life, and Stephen King has a bunch of stories out, books, film out, but he wrote a memoir about the importance of storytelling. Okay, so we're going to talk about a call to action. But before, okay, so you may be wondering, well, okay, I see there's some blocks I can have, but how do I get started? Where do I start? Where do I start? Now, I tell people that work with me, I say, okay, do you journal? And people will show me, yeah, see, I got this journal. Okay, great. I love journaling because it creates a habit. But what I don't like about just regular journaling is you're talking about everything and it's not in any kind of order. So it's fine because you're releasing everything out of your mind from the day, but it's not being in order. It hinders your writing. So you're going to have to put it in order. Now, there are journals that have specific prompts, right? So you take a prompt and you write just about that prompt. And that's what I advise. For example, a lady says, well, when I was 6 years old, that's when we moved to this kibbutz. I'm 6 years old. Okay. Tell me not about moving to the kibbutz when you're 6 year old, but tell me what happened. What specifically happened? Did your mother come in the room and say, hey, this is what we're going to do. We're going to move. And what were you thinking? Where were you sitting? Was it dark? How did you feel? And what were your thoughts after that? And that's all I want you to write. Because what that does is it points you in one direction. And you get very clear about what the impact of that was. Not only that, you start to discover, wow, I didn't realize how I felt about it that day. And then you start to realize other things. Man, that had such an impact on my life. That's why I don't like to share, because we moved to a commune, and so then you start to make discoveries. Now, as you start to make those discoveries, you're only writing about one thing on a piece of paper. How you felt as that 6 year old. Now you think, oh, shoot, I don't like to share. So now you read this paper and put, I don't like to share. And you go back to writing about the 6 year old experience. As things come to your mind, you put them on another piece of paper. But you continue the flow. Then you go to the next, however you feel, because it's creative. You go to the next story when you finish that one, and then you will be able to put, literally, I took my book, I wrote on each piece of paper a different topic, and then I started writing subtopics on different paper and adding it in. And then I just took it, you might as well say I threw it up in the air and let it fall. got on the floor and put it in order. Now, that may seem strange, but there's something about the physical, using your physical body movement, even in writing. Like when you get tired of writing, get up and move, get up and walk, get up and go outside, take and breathe in the air, look at the stars, There's something about that, but you can literally write a book just by writing one little instance at a time. And normally we all have that story we wanted to share, but who do we share it with? Because it's like insignificant. Like, I'll tell you a story. I was on my way to my grandson's birthday party, his 3-year-old birthday party. I took off up Highway 138 going towards Lancaster, and it was desert. I mean, it was dry. I looked to the left, it was dry, to the right. I mean, it was so hot that the sun was beaming on the windshield, and I can feel it heating up my face in the car. And I'm thinking, there's nothing out here. There's barely any houses. There's old, dilapidated trailers. There's hardly any building. It's so high. Have you ever seen the little rays coming off the off the pavement? You could see the rays coming off the pavement, and I'm like, man. But enough of that. I better pay attention. And I'm glad I did, because the car in front of me was slowing down. And I thought, why is he slowing down? And as I approached, there was water gushing across the highway. I'm like, water? Where did this water come from? There's nothing out here, And we drove a little further, more water gushing across the highway. I'm like, there should be any water. There's no lakes around. So I thought to look up at the mountain, and on the very, very, very top, there was snow. And what I realized was that snow melted, came hundreds of miles down the mountain, hundreds of miles across the desert, and crossed this highway. Wow, I thought, man, it can only be God, because he cares so much about everything, all of his creation, all the little scorpions, the rats, the muskrats, or whatever in the desert, the ants, the black widow. He cares so much about them that he would have water come hundreds of miles down the mountain, across the desert, to give them the sustenance of life. If he cares that much about the little creatures, how much more could he care for us? So you have a story in you. It's a mundane story. I mean, it appears like, who am I going to just randomly tell that? To put it down, write it down, because it will be a story that you can write at some point. And so again, write one little instance at a time. If your book is on your business, write why, when did you get that idea? How did the idea come? You was walking down the street, and all of a sudden you saw a window, and you said, I want to be a window washer or repair person. So, and just write just about how, so you always want to write what happened, when it happened, where it happened, how it happened, and maybe why. What, when, where, why, how. That you learned in school. Besides the what happened? I was walking down the street. Where did it happen? In my community. Why did it happen? Because it was so hot outside. I had to get outside and enjoy the weather, but not necessarily in order, but just remember those elements, because those are the elements that people will want to hear. And it's really as simple as that. You know, stay on task, get an accountability partner, or get help, determine what you want to write about, know your target market, which you can go on AI chat GPT. You can say what my business is. I help people clean houses. And who is my target market? What age group? What income level? And it'll pull up all the data from the website and give you your resources. I'm not saying write chat GPT or AI. I'm saying use it as a tool or resource. It saves me a lot of time, really, to help me discover different things I need to know. And why is it what you say important? Write 5 topics, 10 topics on what you want to say. Write 3 to 5 topics on subtopics, and that's when we get into the outline. And again, this is about unlocking those blocks. I can share more with you about just really easy way to write the outline. You can use that little topical outline to write your one topic at a time. Journal, but only get a journal that is specific. You can make your own journal, that specific idea, one thing you want to talk about, one thing, the one thing, the one thing. And so journal 1, you get another idea, you write it down over here, you keep going, and then you go do that. And next thing you know, you have a book. So thank you for listening. I appreciate you all listening. And because you're such good listeners, I'd like to offer you a discount for my next live Zoom. And it's going to be Write Your Book in a Weekend. And I call it the Weekend Book. So we're literally going to write a book that can be published on Amazon in a weekend. And trust me, it's possible. So if you want more information about that, though, you see my number on the screen. You can text the word weekend to that number. Also put your name on the text. So put your name on the text the word weekend to 866-217-4813. Again, weekend to 866-217-4813. And without further ado, I have the pleasure of introducing our co-host, Dr. Joe Connor. So Dr. Joe is, he has a doctorate in comparative biochemistry ministry from University of California at San Diego. His research and educational outreach programs have been supported by diverse sources, including ARCO, NASA, NIH, NSF, parents and students, and UNESCO. He has taught science programs and conducted research from Baltimore, Los Angeles, San Diego, Savannah, Ivory Coast, Freetown, Sierra Leone, Nigeria, all over the world. He is and worked as a professor. His systems shared today are in communication trilogy. And I could personally say that when I met Dr. Joe had a book inside of him, and there's no better time than today for him to discuss his critical perspective. So I'd like to introduce to you Dr. Joe in critical perspective, understanding opinions that are not your own. Dr. Joe.
Thank you, Dr. Peggy. That presentation and breaking down your philosophy and approach to helping people write, and your coaching style was very inspirational. Gave me a lot of nuggets to use. And for those who are watching, my book would not have been published at the time it has been published without her. We had many sessions talking about the approach and many butting heads even discussing different approaches. But that's part of the reason you want to coach. Someone who you can speak candidly with, disagree with, but not take it personally. Because as she said, you got to get the story out. And sometimes you're not really clear of what your story is. But as she alluded to, your story is very important. And so we want to share with you the essence of what she helped me publish. And the book is called Critical Perspective, Understanding an Opinion That's Not Your Own. It's quite different than what most people are familiar with as critical thinking. And I'm proposing that a concept, an idea, and a language for this idea that it will be new, because there's the idea that of critical perspective is different than most people are familiar with. And so I will say at the outset that in the times that we're in, there's a lot of reasons that people disagree. But let me give you a little background so you can understand how this trilogy of communication came from a biochemist, a biologist who focused on teaching marine biology and going across the world as a consultant with UNESCO, United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, to West Africa. Well, the way this communication thing came about is that my students and your students and you were never taught how to argue in class. And it makes a difference that if you want to present your case, you have to be able to present it coherently and understand your position, but you also need to understand the person you're going to talk with. For example, if a student wanted to have a discussion with their teacher and they got a grade that they did not think they deserved, let's be candid. Calling the teacher a son of a bitch is not a winning proposition. But the student, nonetheless, has a disagreement. But how do you approach that? And the critical perspective is based upon the vowels. Actually, it's based upon three of the vowels: A, E, and O. Assumptions, expectations, and observations. And every so often you see my head move to the side and you see the vowels. The icon that's behind me in the background represents all three books. And Dr. Peggy has helped me get the first one out, Critical Perspective. Say, for example, you are asked by your teacher to say what paradox is. And then you give the definition of paradox because of your life experiences. You say that paradox is a club, a dance club, and the teacher marks you wrong. Now, this is a real situation because in 2003, I was given a presentation for the Black Engineer of the Year Awards in Baltimore, Maryland. And I had a workshop for middle school students and high school students. And I asked that question: what's paradox? And the student enthusiastically raised his hand. He said, it's a club. 5 seconds later, another student said, yes. And I saw him there last Thursday. Now, just think, let's imagine you're a high school student, you're at a club, and you may met this, in this case, a young man, and he met a beautiful young lady, and they were off in the corner there, engaged in an intimate discussion, let's say. That would leave an impression on you. And so when someone asks you in a class assignment, what's a paradox, you remember that time you met that young lady at the club. And so you enthusiastically says it's a dance club, and the teacher marks you wrong. And you say, why? I mean, it is a club. I go there all the time. So how do you talk to the teacher about that? Well, that's why critical perspective is important. You approach the teacher and say, I have a disagreement about my grade. I think I deserve a better grade. You asked me what a paradox was, and you marked me down. You gave me a C and not an A. And I wanted to discuss my grade. And the teacher says, well, you know, a paradox is when two truths are contradictory. It's like light is a paradox. It behaves as a wave and it behaves as a marble, a particle. We call them photons. That's where Star Trek got the term photon torpedoes. But the student says, yes, that's true. But you didn't ask me, you asked me about the word paradox. In my experience, paradox is a club. And I can take you to the club. You did not ask me to come up with your experience. So what were you assuming, Madam Teacher or Mr. Teacher? And based on that assumption, you had expectations. You were, in your life experiences, you are dealing with the academic environment. And then because of that, you expect like an answer, like it behaves as something that's mutually contradictory, but still true. But in my life experiences and my observation, it's actually a club. So I answered your question, and I think that I deserve a better grade. You can see how engaging the teacher in logically understanding the question, you can see how disagreements can arise based on the assumptions someone makes, expectations based on those assumptions, and their life experiences or observations. And you have a basis to be able to see how your uncle or aunt or mom and dad, son or co-worker have a different conclusion about the same facts. It's because their life experiences about those facts are different. And that's what critical perspective is all about. How to engage in a conversation and appreciate the fact that people come from different life experiences. Now, may see over my shoulder this black dot. And that's important. It's not a mistake. And I think Dr. Peggy, when we came up with the icon, she said, she thought that was a mistake. What are these dots doing, black dots doing in here? But the black dots are very important because I use it in my discussions about the book when I do discussions at the extension programs for University of Denver, and I've done it several times. The black dot represents a singularity, a black hole, if you will. And if you understand that the black holes will draw everything toward itself when things pass the event horizon. And we are like that in many ways. Our life experiences come to us and we experience it because it crosses our event horizon, our five senses, as you will. And if you read the book about Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, even things that you're not even conscious of could influence you and make you who you are. And if you, being a singularity and uniquely you, and if you can appreciate how you came to be you, it's not difficult for you to accept the fact that other people are not you. And if they're not you, then it's not a difficult stretch to realize they have different experiences than you. And in my book, it talks about identical twins, how even though they are genetically identical, they can have different life views, different perspectives on life because of their experiences. And that's what this is all about. Helping you be able to communicate with people you may disagree with. It's quite unfortunate in the times we live in, we hear people disinviting relatives from Thanksgiving dinner because they have a different political view than they do. And so what we are hoping with the book is to be able to not to get everybody to agree, because disagreement is very important, because if you don't have disagreement, you really won't be able to solve the critical problems that face our society. You need that give and take. And so it's important that you be able to appreciate that because someone disagree with doesn't make them a jerk. It just means they have different life experiences than you do. And it's very important because as in America, because we are a great nation because we have the diversity of people who are here from all parts of the world. And therefore we can take advantage of their perspectives and come up with really good ideas. And if you look at a lot of the businesses that are major businesses are run right now by people who are not born in the United States. And that's because in America, we do really appreciate diversity, even though sometimes you wonder from some of the ways some people talk about immigrants and things of this nature. But the truth of the matter is, historically, we've benefited from the diversity of men, women, of our culture, from gender wise, and also from different backgrounds. And so the book that Dr. Peggy helped me to write and get published, and is being used, and the concept is being used around the world. For right now, we know about COP, I think it's COP 27, COP 29, and dealing with the climate issues. One of the negotiators in that climate thing, a mom read my book and shared with her daughter, who's one of the delegates at the International Environmental Conference that's going on for 2 weeks overseas. Then that's one place. Then in Barbados, I've been asked to talk about the book for some challenges at one of the colleges in the Barbados. And then in Portland, talking to a librarian there, the possibility of talking to some of the diversity issues that affect Portland library system. Then in Illinois, also the same kind of situation that many people are interested in and understanding how to better understand things that are affecting their community. And so what I remember I gave a presentation at the let's see, this was the what's that organization, the Rotary Club in Parker, Colorado. And so I was mentioning to a gentleman and just as a guest to talk about the idea of disagreements and working with people you may disagree. And one of the gentlemen said, that would be good for me to better understand my grandson. And I hear this all the time when I was doing research in Las Vegas. I was walking through the casinos and talking to different people in the restaurants and stuff. And everyone I talked to was saying this is a timely kind of discussion. I was in Park City, Utah, doing research on the book, my next book, and the same thing in Park City, Utah. Everywhere I go and talk to people, New Orleans, Louisiana, talking to people there at a conference I was attending for librarians, same thing. So what I'm saying is that your perspective is, Dr. Peggy was talking about, is part of your story. And one of the things that I try to do, and that she is also doing, is trying to help people find out a little bit more about who they are. And in my communication theme is that to better understand other people, you have to better understand yourself. On the wall of, I think, one of the Greek temples, I think it was Aphrodite, or it says, know thyself. And if you don't know where you came from, it's kind of difficult for you to be able to talk about disagreeing with someone when you don't even know where you're coming from or how you arrived at your own opinions. And opinions are just that, opinions. They're not fact, but it's what you think. What is the thing Mark Twain was saying? It's not a problem of it's how to quote paraphrases. In essence, he said, it's not what you know that's not true that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure, but just ain't so, that gets you into trouble. And that's why you got to be able to be a little bit more humble in your communication to people, because your opinions came from somewhere, and the person who you develop your opinions on may not have all of the floors going to the top floor. but you have based your opinions on them, but you don't really know where they got their facts from, or even if the facts are really facts. She alluded to the idea of fear. Fear being false evidence appearing real. So if you have fear, it may be something that is unreal that you're fearful of. And that could affect your story. And if you don't know that, or you're not comfortable with self-exploration, which she's alluding to know yourself and asking these really important questions, it's going to be a challenge. And she was alluding to the fact that someone was telling a story, but it really wasn't what was that she said she wanted to talk about. And I've had that experience too, where people talk a good game about certain things, but when you probe and ask them, it was a homeless class I was teaching at church, a ministry of homeless, and the gentleman always talked about his work with computers, and we did a brainstorming exercise, and he wrote down a little brief story, and never once in his story did he mention the word computer. So that was a disconnect, a non-congruence between what he said and what really was part of his makeup. And so you need to know that, because that happens a lot, and you don't really know where your opinion came from, and you're arguing with people about an opinion, but you don't know how you formulate your own opinion. So having said that, this is a great opportunity to learn more about a wonderful coach, can get your ideas expressed, and also to show that you have something of value to share with the world and your community and your family. And one last note, when you publish, not only will you benefit, but your family will benefit from you being a published author. My granddaughter, when she found out that I had published Critical Perspective, Understanding Your Opinion and Not Your Own, she wrote me, Grandpa, I'm really proud of you. I'm excited, you know. So what I'm saying is, it is not only for you that you write, but your family has a new legacy to share because they have a family member that's a published author. Now, thank you for listening, and you have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much, Dr. Joe. And just so you know, you can find his book on Amazon. It's Critical Perspective, and you can put in Dr. Joe Connor, and it will come up. So be sure that you get the book. Also, Dr. Joe, I had the opportunity to use your theory. Someone was talking to me about politics, and we didn't agree. And I said, well, you know, who we choose to vote for a lot of times comes from the experiences that we have. And he couldn't deny it. He's like, yeah. So that makes a person think, well, what experience have they had that I haven't had, that maybe I need to be just a little bit more gracious about, you know? The other thing too that I noticed in writing, sometimes we have an opinion and we think, well, everybody's maybe not going to agree with that opinion. So I find that sometimes I will explain it, give the background of it, but most of the time I will acknowledge that you don't agree. So I think acknowledgement is really important. But maybe you can come back and tell us how we can learn to have that open mind and that critical perspective, and why don't we know how to debate? I mean, in our era, my era, we grew up debating, but a lot of people, like you said, they think you're attacking them, right? Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that's why this black dot over my shoulder, over this shoulder, is so important, because first you got to remember that you're personally important. As we talked about the water coming down the road from the melting of the ice, and giving nourishment for the different desert creatures, Each one of us is uniquely and fearfully made by our Creator with a purpose. And if we can accept the fact that we are important, it's not difficult to accept the fact that another person are also important. And if we can accept the fact that our life experience, as you presented the question to the person who disagreed politically, is that let's talk about our experiences. One of the areas has to do with the police, for example. If you have never been stopped by the police, but if you have, then you realize that some people have a different experience with the police stopping them than you do. In my community, if you're stopped by the police, we have been told you put your hands on the steering wheel and highly visible, and you don't, and so other people, and you don't get up there and usually get into an argument with a police officer. But some people in their culture, you feel perfectly safe to do that. But in some cultures, it's a matter of life and death if you don't.
Exactly.
And even if you don't, it doesn't mean that you're going to come out of that situation alive. And so it's how you have had experiences with the police and knowing the history of American police force in the United States, you have a different interpretation than someone who doesn't know the history of policing in the United States and its origin.
Yeah.
And so experiences are important, but it's not designed to be an ad hominem attack, attacking the value of the person. Our value comes from being a black hole, being uniquely created by God, and our experiences, our steps. We say, the Bible says, man or people plan, but God directs our steps. So if we plan to go out a certain door or exit a convention center, there are multiple doors we can exit from. Would you agree?
Yes.
If you go out one door and I go out another door, we're going to have different life experiences because of just exiting in a particular door.
Mm-hmm.
And life is like that because there are many doors, we have steps we have gone, and God has directed our steps. If we accept that, then we can accept the fact that someone may have a different perspective than we do.
Yeah.
And you can comfortably engage in a conversation expecting that they will have different life experiences, and you want to learn about those experiences. You're not confronting them, you're asking for a discovery. We're trying to learn what you don't know. It's not to put them on the spot or put them down. It's just that you accept the fact that I have not walked in your steps.
Yeah.
And you can begin a conversation to learn and let them explain their experiences, which are different than yours. Because no one can deny your testimony. Like we're talking about the paradox. Now, the teacher may say, well, that the paradox is in the dictionary saying this and that, and that's true. But I went to this club and I met this cutie pie. It's part of my life experiences. I don't care what book you read about paradox. It is a fact. And I can argue based upon my life experiences. And that's why the O for observation experiences is an important piece, which differentiates from critical thinking. And that's why it will take time for people to get used to this new idea of critical perspective versus critical thinking. And that's why I'm glad you helped me get my book published, because it's gonna be slow going, but eventually it was going to be a common conversation, because it does give people a way to engage in a conversation. Otherwise, they would be uncomfortable. How do you engage in a disagreement without attacking it? Because politically, right now, people are so comfortable at ad hominem attacks. attacking the value of a person as opposed to the issue at hand. And we're so comfortable, and that is a lot of times people think that's the proper way to engage in a conversation and disagreement. It's calling the other person a jerk, calling them an idiot, calling them a fool, and things like that, and giving them other derogatory terms to make them other, and to be able to take to abuse people because they are the other, to make them less than human because they're the other. But if you accept the critical perspective, they're God's creation with a unique path in your own, then you can relax no matter who comes your way, because you're meeting one of God's creatures and creations who has a special path that you didn't take.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Joe, for your words of wisdom. And I'm looking forward to helping you with that workbook now as well. That workbook is going to be necessary so that people can, take time to digest this phenomenon, I'm going to call it, because although it shouldn't be, it's something very new to society. To make that change is going to take work, and the workbook will help with that. And so again, if you want to reach Dr. Joe, if you want to pick up his book, A Critical Perspective, you can see it on Amazon. Just type in Critical Perspective under the book section, Dr. Joe Connor, and it will come up. And we would like to invite you back to a Q&A. We're going to do a Q&A, and it's December 10th, I believe. And
yes, December 10th.
At 1 o'clock. And we're
Pacific time.
Yes, Pacific time. I love the fact that it's international here, but it's Pacific Standard Time, and we're going to send out a Zoom link for that as well, where you can ask questions about not only about writing your book and some of the breakthroughs you've had based on this live Zoom, but also about critical perspective and understand an opinion that's not your own. So, okay. Right.
It's a pleasure, and always, and I'm looking forward for your help on my other two books, on the part of the trilogy. One's called The Vials of Science, and the other one is called The Connor Bubble. And the icon is representing all three books. And I'm looking forward to your help as I get those other books online and published.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, Dr. Joe, thank you again. Good talking to you, and we'll see you in soon. The meeting room.
Okay.
All righty.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.